Hello and welcome to Military Mantra. In this interview, we have today Lieutenant Commander Praveen Tulpule, who have served in the Indian Navy for close to 17 years. And in this interview, we'll try to understand his journey of joining Indian Navy, live within the Navy as an officer, and various life lessons that he has learned over his service. And currently, how he is spreading happiness, something also we'll basically understand. So welcome, sir, and thank you for coming on this interview today. Yeah, sir, if you could also tell us, how did you back then decide to join the Indian Navy? What was your motivation back then? And if you can also tell us what year are we talking about?
Okay, so we'll have to rewind a lot of it because today I'm 60 years old. And perhaps this spark was put into me or it came into me when I was around 14 years of age, 13 years of age. Okay, so it's a big rewind. Let's go back. My sister got married in 1974. And she got married to a naval officer, a smart young naval officer. Okay, so until then, perhaps I would have always thought of joining, not particularly the Navy or the Army or Air Force, but I was, obviously everybody at a particular age, boys, they love a uniform. A uniform, I'm saying, it could be even a firefighter's uniform. It could be a police constable's uniform. It could be a postman's uniform. Our choices vary. So I was not averse to getting into uniform. I would have loved it, but because my brother-in-law happened to be from the Navy and that white uniform and a couple of visits to the ships that he was serving on after he got married, I think that must have really ignited the first spark in me. Had my brother-in-law been from the Army or the Air Force, perhaps I would have joined, perhaps I would have been influenced to go that side. I really don't know. But I think the basic credit should go to my brother-in-law.
Which year are we talking about when you joined Indian Navy? And also, if not Indian Navy, what would have you been doing then?
Today, okay, so somewhere those days, we didn't have much. I mean, obviously there was no internet, there was no discussions like this happening. So we started preparing. I opted for the, what is it called? The NDA entrance exam somewhere in 77. And those days, the books that we had to prepare with, there was a huge book, I think about 2 kgs weight, I must have told you earlier. And it was in a different pattern, which I realized later. But I think around the time that I started appearing, they switched over to multiple answer choice, MQC and all that stuff, right? Whereas earlier, the book that I prepared with was that essay type answers. Very little tick marks and quick short answers and all. So I prepared on that and I qualified. One more book that I had referred to was not a book, actually a magazine, which was a monthly magazine. It was called Competition Success Review, CSR. You told me that it's still in vogue and people do refer it, and I believe that's a real good digest for everybody. And I have not seen that thing on the stand because I have not gone to the stands, but there used to be a small booklet inside that entire magazine in the center, this thing, which used to be like comprehensive IQ tests and all that type of quick tests. We used to do that. And that really helped. And the first time I qualified my SSB was in 78.
Okay.
I say first time because I didn't make it the first time.
Okay.
No regrets about that. Perhaps destiny had something else in mind with my future. And had I qualified in entire thing in 78 and joined, I would have joined the 60th course, 60 NDA. But as luck would have it, as destiny wrote it for me, I joined a little later and I qualified for the equivalent of 64th NDA. I'm direct entry, 26th Naval Academy or direct entry course.
Got it.
So when we prepared for the written UPSC exams, it was not very different because the base was 11th standard. And I was in 11th standard I was in Gujarat those days. So I'm from the first batch of 10+2, which we had converted. Maharashtra, it was 1 year earlier. Gujarat, it started in 76, was the first 10th qualified. So I was in the 11th and I appeared for the exams. I went all the way to, because I had moved out from Ahmedabad. We went back to Ahmedabad to appear for my test and I qualified. It was such an easy thing. And perhaps because we were already in the 11th, the syllabus didn't seem too daunting. It was okay. Initially, that feeling, SSP was a much later thing. We had only qualified for the written exam. That itself gave us such excitement and euphoria. Because ab to ho gaya. Now we joined. Little did I know what was there in store for me.
Correct. So if you could tell us, how did you then prepare for service selection board, that SSB, and we now that we talk about those officer-like qualities, did you have any knowledge about that, and what is your perspective about these officer-like qualities?
Yeah, officer-like qualities actually all of us have. They just get refined or fine-tuned when you join the forces. All of us have a good heart, a patriotic heart, a thought for your nation. All of us. We are all good team workers. We are all good leaders. Somewhere or the other, that thing shines through every one of us. This is irrespective of your social class, your financial status and everything. These qualities are there in different quantities. Only thing is, perhaps the forces help you bring them out, because that is what they want. Okay, I would step a little forward and say even our sailors, our jawans, our airmen, they also have OLQ. Everybody has. When we prepared for the SSB interview, again, it was like, "Theek hai, jana interview dena." I had heard from my brother-in-law, okay, there's a 10 obstacle course with 10 obstacles, each carrying points 1 to 10, counting to 55. And if you finish all the 10, you get a chance to complete more. I was a decent football player. I was a decent cricket player, but I had never climbed a rope. I could do a couple of push-ups, but rope climbing कौन करता है? Normal life में कौन rope climbing करता है? School में नहीं करता है. You don't need to. You're not Romeo Juliet type के girlfriend को मिलने जाना ऊपर. So I think that was the thing for us where I would have scored a little less marks in my SSB. But group tasks and individual tasks and everything was perfectly fine for me, because if you are a team player, if you play cricket, if you play football, you know how a team works. As you grow senior in age and experience, once in a while you are being made the captain of the team or a leader of the team, so you know how to handle your team also. So those unknown OLQ factors also come out. You know when to keep quiet, otherwise people will laugh at you or people will mock you. That psychology has already taught you 10 years in school, right? What I did not prepare at all for the first SSB was the psychological process.
Okay.
Because first of all, I was a little ignorant. And what would they do about me? They would only make up or brush up my existing mind to make it appear good for the psychologists and the psychiatrists or the analysts across the board, right? And I now feel that it was good that I never got tutored or much focused on that, because my natural self came out. I had gone to Allahabad for my first SSB and I had cleared it. I cleared that. I cleared my medicals also post that. And now I have to join the Navy. First choice Navy tha, I was so confident, believe me, stupidly confident. Now I laugh at myself. Without waiting for the call letter from the government or the NDA, I withdrew my name from the college. And I was already preparing to buy a trunk and all those things so that I could leave. Okay. Didn't happen. Normally, which is a standard trend, if there are 100, just giving a rough example, if there are 100 people in the top list who are supposed to join, at least 5-6 drop out. There are various reasons, some personal reasons, some family pressure, किसी की दादी ना बोल देती है, किसी के दादाजी ना बोल देते हैं, नानी ना बोलती है. कभी-कभी the child has second options available and he feels नहीं इसके बदले मैं engineer बनूंगा या मेरे को फौज में जाना ही नहीं है. Nothing against them, but they do drop out. And that is how people like me who are on the waiting list step up. वो waiting list से RSC हो जाता है हमारा. Unfortunately, that many people, I was on the waiting list, I was not in the merit of top 300 plus people who joined. And I remained on the waiting list. I was in Jalgaon in northern Maharashtra. My brother-in-law, the naval officer, he was posted in NDA those days. And I'm talking about 78. We did not have mobiles or laptops or anything. Even I don't even recollect if we had a phone at home.
Okay.
So we had to book a trunk call to him. And it came after 2-3 years, it was connected to, and I asked him what happened. So he asked me, what are you doing there? Go back to your college, the course has started. Can you imagine the disappointment and the frustration in a young boy's mind? Fortunately, my parents, my family supported me, put me up with a lot of bolstering and all. Nothing, this is not the end of the road. Abhi bhi hai. What do I do now? I've taken my name off the college rolls. And where I was, Jalgaon, which is a very small place. If I sneeze a little louder, the entire town knows. Okay. So I put up a brave front. And I went and I think, I don't recollect whether the principal or the vice principal. They were very friendly people. And I told them, sir, this is what has happened. And perhaps because of my excitement or whatever you call it, I've withdrawn my name and I would like to come back to college if you allow me. All he perhaps did was ring the bell on his table, called the peon and said, into admission form there. It was so easy those days. You didn't have to apply and wait for waiting list, merit list 1, merit list 2, merit list 3. You just had to go to the concerned person, request for an admission form, and I joined my college back. And that's how I restarted my educational stuff, completing my graduation ultimately. And in 81, I graduated.
Okay.
What do I do now? Was the question. I had not given up mentally, though I was not so focused in between 2 years, 79, 80, 80. I was not too focused. Because once you're in college, there are so many other diversions and distractions that you have. And of course, academics is there. But I started preparing again for the written exam. This time I knew it's going to be multiple choice. You just have to take a pencil and do those black dots. You don't have to write answers. And everything went well. And I qualified. In 81, I qualified. 82 was my assistant. But this time I was a little cautious. I knew what is TAT, I knew what is PAT, I knew word association tests and all those things. But I didn't really focus on that. I tried to focus a little on my physical. Because in college also I was a good outdoor player. Academics, I was not a outstanding star. I never came in the first 5 or even first 10. But like they say in the Forge, we don't want super duper smart people. We want average common sense people. So I think I was in that bracket, mean bracket. We went for the SSB in Bangalore. This time I was more focused. First time when I went, I think when they picked us up from the Allahabad railway station in what is it called? Shaktiman. Preturner or Shaktiman came to pick us up. It was such an excitement. Army वालों ने truck भेजा तुमको pick up करने के लिए. Whatever 3, 5, 7 people we were there. And we went there and overnight we were transformed into cadets with chest number. They gave us bibs which had chest numbers and you had to wear them continuously while you were on campus. And it looked nice, like it was like giving you an identity from the army itself or the Forge itself. But yet you knew that there was a big hurdle to be crossed. Good, we stayed in barracks. I don't know what is the status now. Do they still stay in open barracks? What we were not used to. An average school boy or an average middle class family boy, he doesn't get served petty by the Sahayak or somebody from the steward, right? At 5:30, he comes and serves you betty because 6:30 or something, you have to be on the ground for the test or the task. Those 3 days, 4 days was very nice in Allahabad also and in Bangalore also. Bangalore, I think they must have grilled me a little more during the interviews. Wondering why did I not make the cut in the first one. Everything went off well. And then they offered me, do you want to join the aviation branch of the Navy? What an excitement. Navy join करने आए हो and you get added bonus 1+1 free type की Navy के साथ Air Force भी join करने मिलेगा. And I was excited. And I had almost opted for it. But my brother-in-law was wiser, which he is. And he said, no. I called him. And he said, no, wait. You just cleared your SSB. You yet to clear your medical. You've been out for 3 years, 4 years after your first SSB medicals. You've been a civilian. Your life pattern would have changed. So first, let us clear the medicals. Let us get into the Navy first. Let us get the white uniform first. And later on, if you so decide, Navy will still offer you a chance to get your wings, your flying wings. I think that was good advice he gave me. I stuck to that. Fortunately, I never had any medical issues until quite late. But yeah, we cleared the medicals, and this time I didn't tom-tom everywhere. I'd already passed my graduation, so I didn't have to take a leaving certificate additionally from the college. And that's all. I just kept on waiting, and 82, I think somewhere October, I got my call. My SSB cleared November, December, I got my call. January 83, the third week, I joined Naval Academy at Cochin those days.
Okay. Sir, in that case, if you could tell us, how was life back then in the academy? Because, there's a lot of things which happens, there are a lot of memories you would have, any memory that you would like to share or any experience.
Let us start with the joining instructions that come to you. They send you a file. 6 pairs of white underwear, 6 pairs of white vest, 6 pairs of white socks, so-and-so pattern, OP or derby pattern shoes, black shoes, which should have only 6 holes or 8 holes. I'm so excited. This life is going to be only pure white till you go there. Okay? And you've been about 20 years on the civil streets. You think you've seen life. You've grown a nice mustache. Okay? And you you board the train, your family comes to see you off. Ye bacha to gaya abhi kaam se type. And you're very excited. Your friends have come to see you off and all those things. You reach Cochin Harbour Terminus somehow. After those days, perhaps 36 or 48 hours used to take. Somebody is there to come and pick you up, and you reach. Or perhaps I took an auto. I don't even recollect now. And as soon as you go there, you report, you don't know what is a quartermaster. Because I had never been exposed to anything. I didn't know who's senior, a petty officer or an officer, or a chief petty officer. Okay. I didn't know, apart from my brother-in-law's ranks, he was a lieutenant those days, a lieutenant commander those days. I didn't know what the ranks were. Okay. I mean, perhaps it might sound very stupid now that though I prepared for these things, I didn't know the exact details. I was not even in the NCC. I was not in any of the scouts or this thing. I was just an average student everywhere. But perhaps I was good enough for the SSB people to think I should make it. After I reported at the academy, I was given a particular, those days we used to have individual cabins for cadets. So I was assigned a cabin. You go there, and first instance, somebody, petty officer perhaps, who's in charge of the cadets, he comes and tells you, 10 minutes may fall in hai, shorts, t-shirt, shoes, socks, and muche nikal de. You don't know why, right? That is the first casualty of your ego that goes there. You go to the washroom and with a very deep, heavy heart, the mustache goes. And then you look at yourself. How do I look? Chilawa anda type. Okay, but that's okay. Then when you look around, everybody is like that. Okay, so you're just being one of the crowd. This I'm talking about the Naval Academy. And then after that, you are a part of a flock that is driven. At that time, you feel ruthlessly and viciously and criminally by a set of sailors and officers who perhaps you think are sadists. But after 6 months, when you realize you lost 10, 12 kgs of weight, okay, you can't recognize yourself from a picture from earlier times. You become smart. You're now proud of your short haircut or a crew cut, and the smart chiseled looks that you give because your fat has gone and you become physically strong, mentally strong. You withstood a lot of ragda and mass ragda and individual ragda parades and PT and pulling and everything. You're ready to take on the world. But that is not the end of it.
As a naval officer, everybody would have to go to the ships, right? So how was your experience in the ship for the first time?
Okay, so being from Bombay, being from a coastal area, I was not averse to, I was not new to the sea. Whereas a lot of people who had joined at the academy along with me, especially from the north, they had not been even on perhaps a cruise boat, a small cruise boat or something like that. Not all, very, very few. So they were perhaps overwhelmed by the expanse and the vastness of the sea. We were much excited, all of us, that as cadets also we were taken for sea training. I think we had gone on one of the Coast Guard ships, Kuthar. There was a wooden ship. Those days, 83, and we had gone on, we had gone what they call familiarization, getting your sea legs. Most of us didn't know what was happening. We had only known port and starboard while we were in the academy. This was the first time you actually got to see what the spray feels like, what is rolling, what is pitching, what is seasickness, and what happens when you puke for 4 or 5 minutes and your guts almost come out. But then that is the training. Like you say, what is it called today? On-job training, OJT? This is actually on-job training. It's like a boot camp where overnight you got to develop a strong stomach and a strong psyche to withstand all that. I'm always, I shall be in gratitude to the Navy for having done that to me.
Sir, you told me you were an executive officer in the Indian Navy. So I also read that you were also on the INS Virat and also an instructor at the academy. So if you could briefly tell us, your experience in the Indian Navy, also on the Virat, how was all of it? And as a communication specialist, what do you do?
Okay, so chronologically, it goes back that 87, after the Sri Lanka operations and everything, I was posted to the academy as an instructor. Now, going back to the place where you've been adjudged as the best cadet, your name is there on the board in the award winners. And when you go back there, you got a little responsible job on your shoulders. Then you got to stand up to that. People should not think, right? Isn't it? What did he do so much? He doesn't look like that. He doesn't look medal material. So there was a lot of responsibility. You got to be a leader figure for those children who come there. You got to be a mother figure also for them because they have left, most of them have left their parents for the first time. You're a matron also to them. You're a whip cracker also for them. You're a trainer also for them. Your life starts with them. Your day starts with them. Your day ends with them as an instructor. You're with them for the morning parade, PT, and even after the dinner when they have their evening study sessions or night study sessions or something like that. Before the pipe down, you're there. You make a round or you be with them. It's a challenging thing. You got to manage because I was married then. I had a child also. So you got to keep your home front happy. And you got to keep your captain happy. And you keep your cadets motivated. Now, when I was an instructor, there were cadets with me and there were acting sub-lieutenants who were engineers. Now, they were not very younger than me compared, in age. So they had to be handled differently. They had to be handled more maturely. Whereas cadets who had come after their 12th standard could be actually, pushed around and made to fall in line. Even the acting sub-lieutenants did fall in line and I had a wonderful time with them. I'm still in touch with those people after so many years, after almost 37 years, 33 years. Life was good in the academy and then I was selected to undergo the communications course, the long C that we call, signal communication course. And I was deputed to Cochin where we have the naval training base. All the training schools are there. And I was not a topper. I cleared all my subjects and I was very happy that I got posted on the mighty Virat. Virat is like a floating city. About 1,200 officers. Did I say that wrong? Sailors from various departments. 200-300 officers from various departments. There are some officers you don't even see them and they don't even see you. The air technical officers and all those things, because their job is below the deck in the hangars. You are generally on the bridge or the upper decks to do your work, being an executive officer. You only interact with them when they are a flying sortie or you are in the briefing room or along with the crew when the flying briefing is going on. We were 3 in the communication department itself. We were 3 officers. I had a very nice senior officer called then Lieutenant Commander Murthy, SVR Murthy, who was also our training officer on INS Betwa, where we did a cadet's time after passing out of the academy. So that was a good reunion, and we knew he is a very thorough, hardworking, and tough taskmaster. He was I think he was a Sword of Honor. No, I think he was a Sword of Honor and others. So very upright and bright officer. So obviously I couldn't have taken it easy with him. And then I was the SCO2. SCO is Signals Communications Officer. He was the SCO, I was the SCO2. And we had another officer who had come up from the ranks. Again, a very, very professional person. He was SCO3. We had a wonderful operational time on Virat. Obviously, what does a communications officer do? Unlike a lot of people might think communication, you must be doing da 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 da. No. Yeah, we know it. We learn the flags, that is the signaling with flags, the semaphore and the Morse code. We did that in signal school. There's a particular limit of speed that you got to pass. But once you come up on, that's basically to be in your background. So in case there's an emergency, no communication means is working except HF, you can send a message or visual communication. But as an officer, perhaps that was not the task. The task was more tactical, more about messages being coded, decoded, encryption and all those things. Apart from that, what 2 big manuals that we have, then I cannot name them here, about how to use them, how to interpret them. As a communications officer, your job is to see the messages that are coming in and brief the command as to what they mean, what is the implication. Not that the command doesn't know, but it is your interpretation also. The captain is obviously a very knowledgeable and a senior officer. He's gone through all these things. But you as a specialist of that department, it is your job to filter out what is important and feed it to him. There might be something that is for us for the lower levels, but something that is important, policy matters, tactical matters, operational matters, and there is no delay in that. Very, very cliche term that we use in the communication department or the branch is messages or signals. We call them signals or messages or information is not to be shared on good to know basis. Okay, I know Akash, so I can share it with him. No. All information is to be shared only on need to know basis. If your department is not concerned or this message does not concern your department, I will not distribute the message to you. And if you realize that, you will not even ask me, Praveen, that was a message, something yesterday that had come, I heard about it. Can you tell me? You will not do that because you know it doesn't concern you. It also helps you because if you don't know what is happening, what doesn't concern you, your mind will be more focused on things that are concerning you. You're not worried about the other people. Your job, you handle that. Very, very interesting. I was there from 90 to 91. 90 May, June I joined. And until the next year I was there, we took part in a lot of exercises and of Bombay and everywhere. We even went in for a major dry docking in Cochin those days.
Okay.
And obviously, there was nothing much in the sense of exciting operations like people would expect. Acha Buddha hai, to kuch bata ke jayega abhi. So I was not so lucky. I mean, I say lucky, unlucky, whatever. I was not in that on those times when we had some aggression from our neighbors or something like that. But yeah, 86, 87, when we had two major exercise in 87, early 87. I think the entire world knows about it. It's there. I was posted on a very different type of a smaller ship, a landing craft, 86, 87 in Vizag. And that was an experience, yes, I cherished through my life.
Okay. Sir, you also spoke about, you were in the Sri Lanka operation. So if you could, whatever details you remember or you would like to share, if you can briefly tell us.
Yeah, one of the medals is there, Op Pawan.
Yeah.
Op Pawan will be there, yeah. Sri Lanka operations, yeah, started what? Actually, we didn't realize perhaps that we are preparing for an operation. We were only preparing for an exercise. It was a tri-service exercise. We were practicing. I was on a LST-M, landing craft M, Mahish. And we were based on the eastern coast those days. It was nice. We were training our soldiers to come onto the ship in the first place, because again, like I said earlier, a lot of people have not seen a ship or not seen the sea. Now, working on a landing craft is an entirely different concept or a ball game. If I say, on a ship, when you're a naval officer, actually you're taught to stay away from the shore and away from shallow waters, right? But on a landing craft, the purpose of the landing craft is to beach. So you see the shore and you beach on it. Like you're actually ramming into a shore. Okay, your hull is so designed that it's not a pointed hull, it's not a sharp hull. It's a flat bottom sort of thing which tapers. So you actually ramp there. Okay. So it's initially it was a little scary. But again, I had very good commanding officers in whom I could trust. Commander Popan was the commanding officer when I joined Mahish. And he again was one of the training officers when I was a cadet. So I knew that, okay, there is somebody senior to me who knows exactly what he's going to do. And of course, he is a very wonderful person. So we were there and we used to take sailors from various units who had come there and get them to know how the ship is, how it rolls, how it pitches, how it goes and beaches. Landing craft has a flat bottom, okay, because it has to beach, it has to go on the beach. And normally other ships will have a bottom like that, right? But they have to cut through water. Now, when they have a bottom like that, they are more stable compared to a flat bottom tub. That tub rolls like this. It gets very seasick on a landing craft. And a person, even a sailor can get seasick. So you can imagine what would happen to a sailor who's land-based. After that, you come and beach and you're not seeing direct dry sand, but you're seeing water there. You've got to cross through the water. The ramp is lowered. You got to cross through it. And people are not ready because they don't know how deep the water is. So then there are people who are sent across. There used to be divers carrying ropes across for safety to train these people, to get them used to the idea of getting outside a ship, even in daylight. And then we would have night training also. Wonderful place. And yeah, we did come to the West Coast for the exercise. And we did a lot of other places we visited, which of course, I don't think I should mention which places I visited, which force I was, the Red Force or the Blue Force and everything. But it was interesting, yes.
So my final question to you would be, you have served Indian Navy for close to 17 years and, there are various life lessons that you have learned. And now, you spread happiness through all your ventures. You became a clown. So what motivated you back then? And, what exactly happiness means to you? Because that's exactly what your agenda is, right? Spreading happiness to everybody.
What happiness means to me, I think we'll keep what happiness comes to me to the last.
Yeah, sure.
Let us start how I got into, okay, so if you look at me right now,
Yeah.
except for the name tally, the medals, the miniature medals, and my cap, and perhaps this look, not this, but this look might give you a resemblance of a naval officer, but there's always a naval officer in the heart. How I got this hair also, I'll share in a little while, but how I became a clown. I had no intentions of becoming a clown. But around the time that I got influenced by the white uniform, I also got influenced by the beautiful hobby or art called magic. Same time. I think my clock or my wheel turned a particular direction and both of them got locked into my future. Throughout my school, throughout my college, and even throughout my naval career, apart from the official duties that I would impart, I also was an unofficial magician or an entertainer of the unit. There was a party in the mess, there was an event or an anniversary celebration or a picnic or Navy Day celebrations or Children's Day celebrations, Santa Claus, Praveen was there. So Navy did not discourage me. Fortunately, my parents also did not discourage me. 1974, 75, there was nothing called magic as a profession. Today we have magicians who are professional magicians. They do only that for the bread, butter, jam and everything, right? Those days, they were only part-time magicians or part-time cricketers also. They had a job with the bank or something and they played cricket. So I was lucky to have parents and a group of people around me who did not say, hey, jadoo mat karo, ye bakwas hai, isme kuch nahi hai. They allowed me to do that. They allowed me to continue with my career also. And it stayed, and towards, I think around 96 when I came back to Bombay, after one of my postings, I became a member of one of the very old societies of magic. It used to be called the SIM, the Society of Indian Magicians. There I got to meet people, and then I started getting to know the art better. I started doing shows for my family, my friends' child's birthday, my child's birthday, and for smaller children this time. And I realized, okay, there is something that I can do to make people happy. How do you make people happy? Coming to that at the end, not yet. I started experimenting with my costume because I realized that if I continuously keep showing you tricks for 10, 15, 20 minutes, all I am doing is telling you, see, I can do this and you cannot catch me. I am very smart. आप एक बार एक्सेप्ट कर लोगे, दो बार एक्सेप्ट करोगे, third time you will avoid me. हाँ मैं अभी आ रहा हूँ करके you will skip out of that place, right? Nobody likes an over smart person or somebody who tries to show off. So I decided I'm not going to be a show off magician. I'm going to be somebody who likes people. Should like me. How will people like me? I let them do the magic. I try to do the magic, magic fails. But if you say the magic words, you say your child's name, you say happy birthday so and so, the magic happens. So who has done the magic? Your child has done the magic. Who's happy? Your family is happy. That's how I landed up being a clown. Yet I had not decided I would leave the Navy and become a full-time clown. But for that, one tragic episode in the year 2000, where I was invited by a particular lady, a family friend, over a phone call. We had those tung type of phones in the office. Praveen, Sunday ko we are doing something with children. Would you like to come and entertain them? Do some magic and let's have fun. I said, yeah, done. She gave me the address. She gave me the address. I noted it down and I was keeping the phone down and I heard she saying something. So I picked it up again and asked her, kya hua? She said, you wear those colorful clothes and all those things. Will you come like that? Children will be happy. I said, okay. I got one more avenue to experiment my clown at their expense, right? I went there on a Sunday where they had called me, and there I got the shock of my life, the first shock of my life as a clown. Just imagine a situation. Tomorrow I fall sick. I'm admitted in the hospital. You come to know Praveen is admitted in the hospital and you come to see me. Okay, what happens? You come to the counter, you see which room or which bed I am in. You're focused only to see Praveen. Go, meet Praveen. say hello to him, tell him a couple of jokes or something, ask him about how the medicine is going, how the nurse is and all that stuff. Okay. Give him those 2 Mosambis that you brought, Santra that you brought for him, biscuits perhaps, and you come back. There are 300 other patients in the hospital, but you do not see them. Not because you are arrogant or you are not sensitive, but right now you come only focused for Praveen. And when I went for the party, I was not focused for anybody. So I went like that. Instead of like this, I went like that. And I see 25 different children. 30 perhaps. Some wearing a mask. Some had no hair on the head. Some was wearing a cap on the bald head. They were all cancer patients. Handling one cancer patient or one patient is perhaps okay. When you are faced with so many, it's an emotional shock. I didn't know what to do. I had 2 choices at that time. Take a step back, call that lady to the one corner and say, Kshama kijiye. I think I stepped into something which is not my genre, which is not my field, and I'm ill prepared for this. Second thing was, you're there, you have your bag of weapons with you. You have a target, not a hostile target, a very friendly target. And the Navy has taught you what to do with your weapons and engage them. Spread happiness. That's what exactly I did. I went ahead, I did my show, and everything went off well. We had our standard sandwiches and wafers and cake at the end of the film. Apne aap jahan se aaye the log chale gaye. During the party, there was one particular child which kept on going around me. Kept on playing with my magical stuff. Mere bag mein haath dalega, mere jeb mein haath dalega, mere piche piche karega. So people actually thought he's part of my group. Or he knows me very well, familiar. Nothing like that. Party khatam ho gaya. Tuesday morning, this lady called me up to tell me that my photo and the child's photo, that particular mischievous child, we had been, featured in a newspaper, a small picture. Okay, and that was like, oh my God, what has happened? So quickly, kisi ko bheja, niche se mangaya, cut out kiya. In the Navy, we have a system called Stand Easy, which is basically tea break or coffee break. So by coffee break, by the end of the coffee break, in my unit, I had become world famous. Okay, imagine paper mein photo chapa bas, maza hai. It went on, and by evening it had died down. खत्म, बच्चों को दिखाया घर पे, खत्म हो गया बात इसके बाद. 2 days later or the next day, it said the lady called for something. I didn't know for what. Before she could start, I said, yeah, thank you so much. Because of you and because of that child, I became famous. I was published, shown in the newspapers. Can I please call that child and say hello to him? I owe him that much. She went serious. She said, sorry, Praveen, wo ho nahi sakta because the child is no more. And there, I didn't know what happened. I must have missed a heartbeat that time. I asked, kya hua? He said, nothing. He was serious. He was on his way out. We didn't know it would happen so suddenly and so quickly. But she had something more to share. I said, Bolo. She said, what happened is we were just wondering about all children there. This particular child had one wish on his list. There were 10, 15 wishes on his list. Whereas out of that, one thing was he wanted to meet a joker. He wanted to meet a clown. And through me, perhaps, that tick mark happened on his list. I was very, very sad. Yes, I was sad that I had to give him the last tick mark so that he could leave us. Had I not met him that day, or perhaps he not met me that day, he would be still going, perhaps. But knowing that he was on his way out, he was very seriously ill, unfortunately with cancer, there was a little, I'll not say happiness, but a little feeling of satisfaction that, okay, at least after meeting me, I could give him some happiness in his life towards the end. And now that he's not there, his suffering is over. His parents' suffering is over. And that is the time I realized I can give, or we can give happiness to people. There's nothing more to life than that, than giving happiness to people. Overnight, I took a decision of leaving the Navy. It did not happen overnight. It took 6 more months to come, or more than 6 months to come through, because leaving the Navy is not like telling your commercial or corporate job, I'm not coming from tomorrow, mera settlement kar do. Right? It's a much, you are commissioned by the president. You have to resign. You have to return the commission to the president. Right? What is happiness? For me, happiness is seeing you smile. Yes, that's a lovely smile. It makes people happy. It makes me happy. How do I make people smile is the next question. I can offer you a chocolate and make you smile. But if you're a child, your parents may not like it. I can offer you a huge amount of money and make you smile, but I may not be able to afford it. Right? So I look at happiness in small things. Appreciation of a person's presence itself is a gift. I realize that. So be it my friend, my senior, my junior, my colleague, the security guard at the entrance of the building, all I've got to do is look at him and ask him, "Kaise ho aaj? Khana khaya? Kaise ho? Barish kaise chal rahi hai? Ghar pe kaise hai?" It tells him that I am not just a security guard standing in uniform. I am a person. This Praveen realizes that I have got a family, I have got a life, and he is concerned about it. That gives me happiness, that he smiles. The recognition of the other person's worth as a human being is what I feel gives that person a chance to smile and me to get happiness. If I give you happiness, you will get more happiness in turn. It's give and take, it multiplies, it manifold. That is the way I look at happiness. You do not need money. You do not need material things to make people happy. All you need is a sympathetic, concerned heart. And one more thing is very useful when you give control to people. I'm not telling people, yes, come on and walk on me and come and hit me, giving you control. No, not that type of control. I'll give you a very simple example. If you have children at home, you should try this around you. You're too young to have children, perhaps. So your nephew, your niece, your cousin, or some child around you, you hold a white handkerchief in your hand and tell him, "See, mere paas lal rumal hai." And he will try to correct you. And you will say, "Nahi, nahi, ye lal hai, ye peela hai." Say anything but lal. But white, sorry. Okay, I get so confused. When you're doing that, he'll keep correcting you and bringing back to that color red. So after 2 minutes, you tell him, "Ha, yeah, now I realize, thank you very much. You corrected me and you told me this is color red." You have given him the opportunity to control you for a little while, and he's so happy. I share another experience about grandparents. Parents, grandparents. Now that I'm a grandparent, I try to relate it with the grandparent idea. आपने देखा होगा दादाजी नानाजी जब पोता पोते के साथ खेलते हैं, पोता चेयर के पीछे जाके छुप जाता है, चेयर के पतले पतले पांव है, उसमें से पोता दिख रहा है, गोलू दिख रहा है. ओके, पोता बोलता, "दादाजी मैं कहाँ हूँ?" Instead of looking at the chair, दादाजी looks there. अरे कहाँ है, पंखे पे भी नहीं है, जेब में भी नहीं है, right? He's pretending that the child has become invisible. He'll go to the chair, he'll sit on the chair, but he'll not find the child. Why? He wants to make the child believe that he has the power to become invisible for a few minutes. Just imagine the happiness that child gets. And when that child laughs with full happiness and glee, can you imagine what parents and grandparents go through? Simple things in life. No money required. This is how I look at happiness, giving something. And that giving something also amounts, anybody 18 and above, a relatively healthy person, 12.5 or 11.5 hemoglobin, I request them donate your blood. There's nothing more personal than giving. Your time and your blood is the only thing that you give to somebody else to make them survive or live, right? blood is the only thing in the hospital where they don't ask you your caste, your creed, your religion, your faith. They only ask you your blood group. And I wish all across the world we had only religions based on blood groups. We don't have religion actually, but if we had religions, we should have only blood group as religions and castes. How has this come out? During the lockdown, initially I realized I cannot go to the salon. I learned so many things in life, but I never learned how to cut my own hair. So I realized, why not take this opportunity, let my hair grow, let it grow to a longer hair length and donate it. Because if I'm donating blood for cancer patients, if I'm doing shows, if I'm doing appearances in hospitals for cancer patients and other patients, why not? This is something my very own. Why not donate this and get a wig made out of it, which can be used by a boy or a young girl or even a lady perhaps in a boy cut, and give them more recognizable features to come and stay with us, come and be one amongst us. They are one amongst us, but they have perhaps at times they do feel bad that they've lost the hair. So this will stay for a while until they grow to about 12 inches or something. And then perhaps you might see my old facade, which was about 58 years I existed in that. And this is because of my Santa Claus. I told you a lot of things started when I was in the Navy, right? My first clowning I did in the Navy. My first Santa Claus appearance was while I was in the Navy in 1994 in a far out base, naval base called INS Kattabomman in South Tamil Nadu. I don't know. It was destiny.
Yeah.
That today I am one of the leading Santa Clauses in the country.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's been my journey from childhood to naval officer to clown to Santa Claus to grandparent now.
Yeah.
Looking forward to more miles. I did skydiving 2 years back.
Okay.
And I'm looking for a solo skydive soon. I have done underwater. I've conducted an underwater wedding as a priest.
Okay.
There's so many firsts in my life that I'm always looking for, not an opportunity, but a chance, perhaps, yes, opportunity to do something that people have not done or people think ye nahi ho sakta. I want to do that.
That's really nice.
I hope I have not bored you. It's about an hour that I've been only talking and you've been nicely tolerating me, smiling there. Good.
No, it was a really wonderful experience, sir. I thought it will be all about Indian Navy, and the perspective that you gave about happiness is something, I hope a lot of people will know about it. And, it was a great experience, talking to you, listening to you.
So as luck would have it, my friend, what has happened is I wore the white uniform only for about 17 and a half years. But these colorful clothes, officially I am wearing since 2001. That is 20 years already. Plus, on and off in the Navy, I used to wear it not as a profession, but as a time pass or a hobby. So I have almost 22, 23, 24 years of experience as an entertainer, as a clown, than a naval officer. So perhaps every time I speak, more of my other life comes out than my naval life comes out. But then I'm really, really very, very thankful to the Navy and the Forge, in fact, because that is one place where you become a man from a boy. I joined at 22, but relatively I was still a boy. I was like the lowest form of marine life when I joined. Okay, that's what they call you when you join. You're the lowest form of marine life as a cadet. And you graduate to becoming an officer. I'm always grateful to the Navy, to the officers that I had who groomed me, officers who didn't think I was good enough. But that's the reason I tried to do better. And of course, my postmates and who did not let me down. And my family support and friends like you who have been there, bringing me on a platform where I can share my thoughts and perhaps get more people to join the Navy and a few more to become clowns.
It was really nice talking to you. And, I hope a lot of people will get perspective about Navy, about, your experience about how to become a clown and why do you do it and what actually happiness is. And a lot of people will learn a lot of things. So finally, thanks a lot again, sir. And, Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. That's the best way to say goodbye, right? Jai Hind.
Yes. Jai
Thank you
Hind,
so
sir.
much for being here.
Yeah. Jai Hind, sir.